Good day and gratitude, family. This is Face the Nation with Bold and Unchained. And we are here with another reading, possibly our final reading of our latest book, Racial Violence in Kentucky, 1865 to 1940. I will get our disclaimer out the way. Copyright disclaimer under 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for the purposes of such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. The fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. And for more clarity, Bolden Unchained is here to assist Black America and Black media in the uncovering and the confronting of many of the anti-life agendas against Black America, the many projects, agendas, the operations that they have, all these operations, agendas, and studies, against Black America, which only seem to undermine and stagnate Black America. So Bolden Unchained is here to assist Black America and Black media towards confronting and stopping all of our disconnect with each other. And we are beginning with the era of slavery. Of course, we do know that our history was before slavery. We were the first people on the planet. Matter of fact, to clear that up, the Big Bang, the cosmos, the Big Bang actually manifested itself into a Black man, the Black woman, the Black child. The Big Bang, it manifested itself as a Black man and a Black woman. It is what it is. So we're here to assist Black America. Our first and final concerns are the well-being and sanity of Black America. Now, we don't advocate for violence. We don't advocate for hate against anyone. We are strictly for the well-being of Black America. We don't harm and hurt anyone caught in the middle of our first and final concern being Black America. We help those caught in the middle. We don't outcast them. We don't let them be hungry or cold. However, don't get it twisted. Our first and final concern is Black America. So, we are reading this book here, midnight. We have our every night at midnight. Hopefully, if I'm on time, I try not to be late, but I'm still learning how to put all of this together myself. So, me and the ancestors, we do ask for, your patience, and we thank you greatly for your patience. But midnight, every night, we try to get together. We do get together with the ancestors, midnight with the ancestors, which is what the night reading is called. And we are addressing some of our most emotional, trying, challenging truths that have come to the forefront. It has been brought to our attention, someone's attention, namely mine's now, and now yours. And so that's what we use midnight with the ancestors. And the ancestors gave me all of this. I wasn't even sure where to start the channel. I did have some videos on there, some musical entertainment videos that I used of other artists and stuff, but I really wasn't sure where to start watering the channel. I planted those seeds and stuff, and I wasn't sure where to start watering this channel. And I did ask the ancestors, and they told me Red Summer. So we read Red Summer 1919, the summer of 1919, and the awakening of Black America. And 12 noon, every day at noon. Yeah, I'm working on getting some cabinets and stuff. And I got another monitor, but I'm having trouble syncing them together. 12 noon, we have read 2 pamphlets of African American heroes, Black heroes and scientists and inventors, and now we are reading African Americans, their impact on United States history. And so we read those at 12 o'clock noon. I may be a little late with those, especially if I'm out somewhere and stuff, because my devices are stationary at home. At some point, I will be able to, navigate and do this while I'm on the go. But for right now, it is what it is. So yeah, get your channel too, and let's do it. And yeah, it's all good. We got to do what we got to do with what we got. We didn't know. We didn't know this whole turnaround. Well, I didn't anyway. But yeah, so we are on chapter 8 of Racial Violence in Kentucky. And I don't know if I explained while we're reading, Midnight with the Ancestors, about our most troubling and trying truths to face. And that's because this right here should have been taught to us. It should have been taught to us. But no one talked to us. No one told us about the history. No one told us. I understand our fear. I get it. I get it, the fear. But so much fear can't be good for Black people. It can't be good for us. No one told us these things. And we need to know these things now. I mean, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 white people showing up for the lynching of one Black man that wasn't even proved that he committed a crime, which is, as we all know from the books, the number one excuse to get the people to jump on a Black man is to say he raped a white woman. That was the number one excuse. Now, they would say the Black man did this and did that, or he killed a white man, or, he stole something. But to get the mind synced, to get their mind synced, they had to say the Black man raped or murdered a white woman. He hurt her. And that's all it took. That's all it took. Even once white people realized that the law would convict the assailant, the crook, the criminal, or whatever you want to call it, for his actions, the criminal for his actions. These people still, they had to inflict. I know I don't have that type of heart. My people don't have that type of heart. Even in all the self-hate that we are witnessing from each other, and we're witnessing a lot of self-hate on each other out here. We have been witnessing it. We don't want to call it what it is, what the root of it is. And see, them roots been watered. Them roots been watered. That's why the Black man is out here just running, just stampeding. The Black race, Black people, our masses is just stampeding right off a motherfucking cliff. But we as a people have to ask ourselves, why? Why? Why are we so disconnected with each other? Number one, first and foremost, with each other. That's because we didn't believe that we fought back. It's like we thought, we were under the impression that we couldn't defend ourselves. We couldn't fight back. Hey, can I call you back? Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye. I'm busy. I'm online. All right. And so Black people having this huge disconnect with us. That's what it's all about. That's what it all boils down to. And who did it? Who caused the injury? See, we got to unpack everything from the music to the TV to the recreational bullshit, the lack of focus, everything. But once we get back to the very beginning, once we get to the root of all of those branches, wow, ain't that something? It's going to lead back to this. I know I didn't want to be the one to have to do this, but I'm not the only one. Go look at Black media. Check out Black media. It's plenty of us trying to remind us, trying to inspire us and motivate us to care about us again. And it begins with us, even down to our self-hate on each other out here. We the only ones can turn that around. We're the only ones that can turn that around. First of all, we should have been policing our own communities. The police they've been out here since what was the first police patrol and stuff in Boston, I think it was in Boston, Massachusetts, or something like that. The very first police department, I think it was in Boston. And not to say that we shouldn't have police, because that's what it started as. We should have, even after the Panthers, we should have taken the initiation and started patrolling our own small communities, even if it was one or two communities in a little area. But we never took the initiative to care about Black people. The Black Panther self-defense plan, we ain't even got it. We ain't even got it. Somebody else got it. Everybody else got it. But we don't have it. And you know what? Since everybody else motherfucking ass been having it, ain't nobody teaching us, helping us, assisting us to take this little small community. Let's start patrolling it. And those of us that do try to do something, we don't really get word of it. We don't really get word of it because we ain't in position. I was just telling you the other day on that live when I was listening to, I don't know if it was that Pastor Gino. It may have been that other guy. Walter White, maybe. Professor Walter White. Anyway, they were saying that the broadcast that be, collecting data on what you be looking at and stuff like that, noticed and announced that Black people, Black America, we watch 10 hours a day of TV. Y'all turn that bullshit off. Hell, it ain't doing nothing but showing us white folks. I mean, turn the damn TV off. If you're going to look at the motherfucker, at least turn it on somebody Black. Some Black news that's letting you know what's going on in our community. But to just sit up and be looking at that motherfucker with white folks now, today, it's too much shit to do. It's too much to do, to heal, to focus, to fix, to rebuild, to learn, to relearn, to unlearn. For us to be wasting our time on white America, white media, white entertainment. They done took everything from black people, white people, yes, white America. Done took everything from black America. And yeah, I'm pissed off about it. You damn right I am. Far as I'm concerned, shit here, we don't need to do but one thing with y'all asses, and that's work with you. If we ain't got our own financial stability and our own passive incomes and our own gardens where we can feed ourselves and shit, so we got to work in, America, the labor force, the workforce, whatever it's called. But that needs to be the extent of it. That needs to be the extent of it. So white America, what you gonna do? Because we can't keep going in like we double dutching in and out. We can't keep doing that with y'all, this love-hate relationship. You know what you've done to us. Y'all know, white America know they done fucked us up. But now they want to grin and snide and laugh and hide and done taught everybody else. Y'all bringing y'all asses over here, treating us the same way. Black America. So yeah, we really don't have a choice but to just go ahead and cut y'all ass off. Feed everybody with a long handle spoon. So we can reel in our own people's hurt. Them young hotheads out there, they somebody's son. They somebody's son, somebody's daughter. Gone too far. But we got to do something. We sure do. Can y'all imagine what a new world finna look like? Can you even imagine what this new world finna look like? And don't tell me you ain't heard about it. You don't know about the robots and the robot dogs and the flying cars. Don't say you don't know about none of that. Because if you don't, your ass is the problem, honey. And individually and collectively. I don't know who you keeping the peace for. But you need to make sure yours got some. Yeah, Black America, we got a decision to make. Who we loyal to? Who are we loyal to, Black America? What, that job? Hell, I read by 2030, it's going to be 800,000 jobs gone, obsolete, replaced. 800,000 jobs gone. Yeah. I don't know what I've been hearing a lot about the Social Security next year. That's right around the corner. You might get more food stamps. I don't know, because I'm just trying to stay focused on one thing, but I know it's a lot going on out here, and it's not going to be really good for Black people. Oh, we will survive, because see, we don't need none of the build up anyway. We don't need none of that fancy, that build up and stuff. I don't know why the hell Black people that's in position let it get this far. I don't know. It don't make no sense to me. Everybody ready to sacrifice us. I mean, how'd it get this far? It's so futuristic. It's like the Jetsons. Oh, y'all know in the Jetsons, it wasn't no Black folks in that cartoon. I didn't never see that. I didn't really watch it like that, but I didn't see no Black people in none of the cartoon Jetsons, unless they was on the ground. But yeah, I digress. But yeah, Black America, we gotta keep our eyes on the prize, because everybody else is. Because I don't know who the hell we looking at And don't say Diddy. Don't say Diddy. Because the music is shot to hell. Y'all know it. And on that note, you need to turn all that music off. Just turn it off. Yep. You probably didn't know this either, but the frequency of music been changed. Yeah, they changed the frequency of the music. And it's having an effect. So much is going on. Yeah, Black America. Black America. Head up. Yep. Eyes on the prize. Everybody else is. Everybody done stole melanin. The theft of melanin. All these agendas against black people. What did we ever do? My ancestors ain't done nothing. This the longest grudge I ever knew. You? I mean, and then, I was reading about, I left the book in the car, I think. I was reading about the Jews and Hitler and stuff. And I agree with our people when they say that folks will never tell the Jews to forget about their Holocaust. A motherfucker wouldn't even fix their mouth. Wouldn't even write it on a piece of paper or whisper it in the wind. They would never tell a Jew to forget about their Holocaust. But black people, I'll forget about it. It didn't happen yesterday. We weren't here. It was a long time ago. We ain't had nothing to do with it. Without acknowledging that, yeah, all of that happened, it's gonna be atoned for. Yeah, I just can't deny it. White America know they done fucked Black America mind up. And see, that's what the getting part. So ironic, because now cosmic energy, karma, we know it as karma. You might know it as God, but cosmic energy is finna handle this. Yeah, especially since the Pope just started opening up them portals. Y'all see that? I didn't look at all of it, but I saw maybe 2 or 3 minutes of the video talking about it and stuff. But yeah, see, they done opened up, and they done opened up and allowed that very needed backup. It was coming anyway. It was coming anyway because we need it. Black people need it. We don't have nothing and no one else to help us. And we don't want our babies to go into this new world order with none of this. Why do societies and people want to do this to our babies? Everybody getting some of this oppression out here now, and they should. Martin Luther King said it. Injustice to one is injustice to all. And everybody getting some of this oppression now, but everybody got something if they straighten their asses up. Black people, we don't have nothing. We finna go into the new world order just like we left the plantations and walked out here with nothing. Now we finna leave here and walk here with nothing. And our babies don't have nothing. And we so hard on each other now, here, today. I just implore us to think about us now. Think about us now. How old are you? And you worried about them friends that's gonna tell you, oh, why you looking at that? You don't tell them motherfuckers to shut their damn mouth or get out. Because Black America, we can't keep doing it no more. This same evil right here is still in white folks. They the motherfucking ones that's lying. They know it. Stop motherfucking lying to us. Okay, so they played us. Everybody saying, I told you so, I told you so, I told you so. Everybody saying it. All the ancestors. But we still don't want to hear it. We still think that white America got our back. We still think we equal. We part of them. We all one. Are they treating your people like we all one? Is anybody treating black people like we all one? I know we all just focused on this one little part of our lives, wherever we live. Wherever we living, that's the one little focus we got. But honey, it's a whole big world out here. And our people ain't safe in none of it. None of it. But I promise you, you remember, talk to your ancestors. They'll let you know. Move! Oh. Why are you always under my feet? Well, let's get to reading. I don't think we're gonna watch anything tonight. All right. Racial violence in Kentucky, 1865 to 1940. Oh, I don't think I ever read the rest of this. It's lynchings, mob rule, and legal lynchings. Lynchings, mob rule, and legal lynchings. Chapter 8, Color-Coded Justice, Racial Violence Under the Law, 1900 to 1940. The conviction that Afro-Americans should be severely punished for their perceived and real transgressions was, of course, nothing new. But in the period from 1900 to 1940, white Kentuckians seem to have been more determined than ever that blacks accused of rape or murder be executed. Whether it was perceived or not. Whether somebody just said, oh, such and such raped somebody. They felt like they should be severely punished. In the new century, more whites acknowledged that mob violence was no longer acceptable. And they demanded, therefore, that the state punish black criminals quickly and firmly. Because remember, it was Kentucky, it was Louisville. It was Louisville, Kentucky that decided, oh, we got to stop being so cannibalistic. Remember? I was wondering, how did white people flip the script from being so cannibal to all of a sudden they the nicest, most peaceful? You would never think that a white granddaddy or great granddaddy down the street was capable of this. We wouldn't even think it or even entertain the idea. But it was Louisville. I can't write in this book because it's not mine. Maybe I get some little sticky notes. But anyway, it was Louisville that decided we can't be this brutal and ruthless. We can't be this cannibal anymore. We have to let the law handle criminals and crime. It was Louisville, and they all were in support of it. And eventually, that's how white folks came to be so nice and free and kind and giving, and want to touch the little babies, the little black babies. They so sweet and stuff. That's how white America did it. But as we see right here, what did they say? What did they say? This here was the clause. See, we'll let the law handle it so we can clean up our act. So we can clean up our act, see? Because now, after we done did all of this torture, now it's time for us to clean ourselves up and flip all of this, project it onto them. Hey, I'm reading it for the first time, just like you hearing it. Now, if it's a lie, where the lie? Where is the lie? But what did they say right here? White Kentuckians seem to have been more determined than ever that blacks accused of rape or murder be executed, which, you know, at first they wanted to do it. They had to do the execution because, see, they had to satisfy that need, that need to feed, that need to see that black body being so, yeah. White people had to have it that way until they decided that, okay, we'll let the law handle the criminals and the crime. But in the new century, more whites acknowledged that mob violence was no longer acceptable, and they demanded, therefore, that the state punish black criminals quickly and firmly. Quickly and firmly. Because if you let them just sit in there, oh, we got to come and get them. It's like a itch. It's like a craving. Make your mouth just water. That's all you could think about. That's all they could think about. That black man in that jail after he had raped a white woman. That's all they could think about. It's on white America's mind. They were putting it in the newspapers 5 days before the trial. White people was already gearing up to get him. And in the other book, it even explained if they couldn't get the one that did the crime, they would go after innocent black people. Innocent black people. It didn't even matter the age. So yeah, you know, I'm not the division. I'm not the divider. Sure ain't. Honey, this the motherfucking divider right here. What a lie. You mean to tell me you saying George C. Wright lying? Well, tell him that. All right. Yeah. So now, who they saying is the super predator? Now who they saying is the savage, the dangerous, the lazy. Who? The black man. The black man. But, however, the white woman with her wicked ass, she still want the black man. That tall, dark, and handsome. That bigness. Mm-hmm. Yeah, y'all ain't fooled nobody. Not everybody. You ain't fooled everybody. No, you haven't. All the black media out here and stuff in black America, y'all still ain't ran across nobody that's trying to spark your remembrance. Better wake up, black America. This our last chance. Yes, honey, this is our last chance before Robot City is what's the what? Yep. Yeah, Robot City. Uh-huh. All the movies, the Terminator. Remember the V? Remember that movie, The V? They Live. I want to know myself, what the hell? Who the hell? Let me finish this right here because we got some videos to watch too. I want to just set up and watch some videos. But before our next book, we're going to watch a couple of videos for a few days just so we can get some bearing of what black media is telling us, what black media is reporting. How about that? All right. Several executions occurred that were little short of lynchings. Local officials promised the lynch mob that the accused Afro-American would be given a quick trial and sentenced to death. This happened in July 1906 in Mayfield, Kentucky, a town, as we have seen, that richly deserved its reputation as a hostile place for black people. Yeah. Shit. Didn't I tell black people that now? Hell, did any of us receive any healing or anything? I mean, no. On July the 25th, Ethel McLane, M-C-L-A-N-E, claimed that she had been raped by Alan Matthias, M-A-T-H-I-A-S. I like that name, Matthias. So she said, Ethel McLane said that she was raped by Alan Matthias. As usual, hundreds of white men joined the police in the search for the Negro. Plans for lynching Matthias were openly discussed. Oh, everybody knew. But after capturing their suspect, the police immediately had him taken to Paducah for safekeeping. When they received word that a mob planned on going to Paducah to lynch Matthias, Mayfield authorities had him sent to Louisville. Usually, with the accused person out of the mob's reach, the prosecuting attorney would take the case before the grand jury, have an indictment issued, and make plans for the trial at a future date. After hearing the many complaints from irate whites that Matthias should be brought back to Mayfield to receive his just punishment, local officials decided to speed up his return, trial, and execution. Shit. They notified the police chief in Louisville that the accused rapist would stand trial within the week. Democratic Governor J.C.W. Beckham agreed to provide troops to escort Matthias from Louisville to the courthouse in Mayfield. Realizing that the black man would be sentenced to death, the citizens of Mayfield quickly constructed the scaffold. Oh, they built the scaffold, an event that resembled many lynchings for which plans had already been finalized for the execution before the accused had even been caught and returned. Yep. And then I thought they said that the lynchings was now private anyway. Maybe that was in another town. Tuesday morning, 6 days after the alleged assault, Matthias and his escorts left Louisville. At some point during the long train ride to Western Kentucky, he decided to plead guilty. According to the Courier-Journal, Matthias, when captured, had been told of the mob waiting to lynch him in Mayfield, and he had become extremely frightened. It is not known if his decision to plead guilty had been done at the urging of the Mayfield officials who accompanied him from Louisville. Now he already finna be killed, finna be executed. Why he gonna tell him that he was guilty on his way to his execution, to his trial and his execution? and the mob is waiting there for him so they can lynch him. Why he gonna sit there and say, I'm guilty? He lying, mother. It is not known if his decision to plead guilty had been done at the urging of the Mayfield officials who accompanied him from Louisville. Even before the train arrived in Mayfield, the sheriff informed reporters that the black man would be executed. This is what he said. The scaffold is ready. He realizes that this is his last trip on this earth and is on the verge of collapse from pure terror and despair. And that's what the sheriff said. The sheriff of Mayfield. And when was this? 1906. Trying to see who was the sheriff. But it's in the book. Y'all, more than 10,000 people witnessed the arrival of the train. 10,000 people. Who was working? 10,000 people. And it's perhaps the largest crowd ever assembled in this small community. By all accounts, Matthias's trial and legal execution were the quickest on record in Kentucky. In its story, justice is avenged, death was penalty. The Paducah newspaper timed the entire proceedings. The Paducah newspaper printed the story, justice is avenged, death was penalty. And they timed the entire proceedings. The train arrived at 6:58 p.m. and it took the guards 10 minutes to carry Matthias to the courthouse. 2 minutes after arriving in court, Matthias pleaded guilty. The jury was sent out at 7:10 and returned at 7:24. The jury was out 14 minutes only because it took time for each man to affix his signature to the verdict. If it wasn't for that, they'd been out for 2 minutes. It would have taken them 2 minutes. Yeah, it would have taken them 2 minutes. After reading the jury's decision, the judge ordered that the sentence be carried out immediately. An announcement greeted with loud cheers. Woo! Matthias reached the scaffold at 7:40. And the sheriff cut his body down at 8 o'clock. By then, the mob, not the authorities, controlled events in Mayfield. The body of the dead demon was carried through the streets in a coffin. The mob's leader said this would be a warning to other blacks. Then, in a move that must have seemed like a replay of events after the December 1896 lynchings, a number of whites visited several blacks and told them to leave town immediately. As the paper noted, these Afro-Americans did as commanded. The four left town quietly and without asking in what manner they had offended. The Courier-Journal tried to put the best light on the execution of Allen Matthias. The Courier-Journal tried to put the best light on the execution of Allen Matthias. Some features of the case are to be regretted, the paper wrote. The fact, however, that Kentucky was saved the mortification of a lynching by an indignant multitude bent upon avenging the innocent victim of the crime is a matter for special congratulation. After explaining that for the dignity of the law, it would have been better if the trial had been less hasty. The paper frankly admitted that since a Negro had raped a white woman, no other result could have been reached, however prolonged the trial. Because remember, for rape of a white woman and stuff, it was immediate death. That was the sick. The editorial concluded with the customary justification for the legal lynchings of blacks. Long drawn out trials followed by appeal with repeated retrials do much to weaken the popular confidence in the law as a remedy for crime. The Courier Journal's editorial clearly reveals that legal lynchings were the norm for blacks accused of certain crimes. A guilty verdict in a rape case did not automatically carry the death sentence, unless, of course, the accused was black. Also, in justifying the prompt execution, the paper all but acknowledged that the state was doing the bidding of the mob. Although the Courier Journal and other commentators expressed some displeasure over the way in which Mayfield authorities had conducted Matthias's trial, they failed to note that in actuality, his execution, which had been planned before the court heard any evidence, his execution was as much a violation of the law they so piously, Piously, piously claimed to treasure as was a lynching. Because the execution occurred immediately after the trial, Matthias was denied his right to appeal to a higher court, and he was prevented from seeking clemency from the governor. And in all likelihood, the black youth had been tried and found guilty without the benefit of counsel to represent and advise him. Matthias was far from being the only Afro-American to experience a speedy trial before a hostile white mob. George Yantis, Yantis, of Lancaster, was arrested on the charge of attempted rape of Mrs. Clayton Marse, Marse, in March 1920. A mob threatened to lynch Yantis, so the authorities decided to move quickly. The very next day, the grand jury handed down an indictment. Realizing that it would take far more time and far more evidence to convict Yantis of attempted rape, the prosecutor urged the court, and it agreed, to sentence him to 7 years in state prison for burglary. Less than 24 hours after his arrest, Yantis was on his way to prison. The outcome of a speedy trial proved to be much worse for another black. A fight in the eastern Kentucky community of Lynch resulted in the death of a white man involved and the arrest of Leonard Griffin, Griffin. Determined to end the matter quickly, Lynch officials immediately tried Griffin for murder. Only at the start of the trial did Griffin confer with an attorney. Not surprisingly, the all-white jury found him guilty of murder and handed down the maximum sentence. With a tip from the authorities, or more likely with its own knowledge of how the legal system worked against blacks, the local newspaper printed stories about Griffin's guilty verdict and death sentence within minutes after the trial ended. The NAACP, believing that an obvious injustice had occurred, intervened on behalf of the doomed man. Members of the organization obtained an audience with the governor and gave what they thought was strong evidence that Griffin had acted in self-defense and that in any event, a fair trial would have been impossible in Lynch because of intense racial hatred. It is believed that if his trial had taken place after a reasonable period of time had elapsed between the crime and the conviction, the penalty would not have been so severe, stated the NAACP's memorandum. Although promising a thorough review of the case, Governor William J. Fields refused to commute the sentence, and on March 20, 1925, only 3 months after his day in court, Griffin died in the electric chair. That Griffin lived several months after being sentenced to death was partly a result of a law passed after the execution of Matthias. The 1906 law mandated a 30-day cooling off period between sentencing a person to death and carrying out the execution. On November 3rd, 1909, a white woman who was allegedly raped in the small town of Dry Ridge. A white woman was allegedly raped in a small town of Dry Ridge. 17-year-old Earl Thompson was arrested, charged with the rape, and taken to Lexington for safekeeping. On December 6th, a special grand jury returned an indictment against him for rape, and a jury was impaneled to hear the case. Meanwhile, a mob gathered at the train depot, awaiting Thompson's return. Fearing a lynching, the circuit judge addressed the crowd, promising that if a lynching was avoided, Thompson would be found guilty and sentenced to death. The judge also assured the mob that Thompson would not go back to Lexington, but would remain in jail in Williamstown until the sentence could be carried out. The word of the circuit judge, his promise that the black teenager would die on the gallows, satisfied the mob. Thomas pleaded not guilty, which meant that the charade of a trial had to take place. The length of the trial, almost 5 hours, upset some of the spectators. At one point, a man holding a knife rushed toward Thompson saying, "Damn him, I will cut his head off." After deliberating for less than an hour, the jury sentenced the black teenager to death. The announcement of the verdict to the women and young children who had not been permitted to attend the trial but had been forced to remain outdoors resulted in a prolonged shout of approval. Some of the men inside the courtroom became wild with rage and were determined to hang him immediately. Thompson was pushed out of a window and carried back to jail, which was quickly surrounded by the mob. Once again, the circuit judge pleaded with the mob, saying Thompson would die in exactly 30 days on Friday, January 7th. Thompson's court-appointed attorney, a member of the community, said he would not appeal the conviction. This seemed to satisfy the mob that justice would be done. As promised, Thompson's execution took place on January 7th, the very first day allowed by law. Public hangings, just like speedy trials, satisfied mob opinion that criminals should not be coddled by the state. The activities that seem to be a part of 19th century executions, the large frenzied crowds, the vendors selling hot dogs, cotton candy, and souvenirs. Sometimes the souvenirs was the black people's body parts. And the news reporters writing about every trivial step taken by the condemned man. All of that remained a part of public executions in the new century. All along, a number of citizens urged the elimination of the carnival-like atmosphere, claiming that it made light of one of the most serious functions performed by the state. Wow. All along, a number of citizens urged the elimination of the carnival-like atmosphere. Oh, now they don't have that carnival-like atmosphere, claiming that it made light of one of the most serious functions performed in the state. What, hanging a black man? They don't want to make light of it. They don't want to make it seem like it's a carnival. Come and enjoy yourself, knowing that they all had that glee. In 1910, a bill was introduced that called for using the electric chair instead of the scaffold for executions. Supporters of the bill added another feature to the law, one clearly designed to end the rowdy behavior that occurred during executions. All executions of the death penalty by electrocution shall take place within the walls of the state penitentiary, and such enclosures as will exclude public view thereof. This bill, which had the support of Governor Wilson, was signed into law on March the 20th, 1910. Eventually, however, the practice of hanging condemned rapists in the county where they had been tried and convicted was reinstituted in Kentucky. So Kentucky decided they're going to reinstitute, hanging rapists. In an attempt to have Will Lockett quickly convicted and returned to state prison, Lexington officials decided to indict him only with the murder of Geneva Hartman, even though evidence existed that she had been sexually assaulted as well. Although elated that justice had been meted out for Lockett, a number of Lexington whites expressed a belief that the electric chair was much too humane for such a heinous crime, that Lockett should have been made to suffer by dying at the end of a rope. Quickly responding to these intense feelings, lawmakers amended the death penalty law, adding a feature that was clearly designed to appeal to the will of the mob. Except in cases where the accused has been adjudged to suffer a death sentence for the crime of rape or attempted rape, in which event sentence shall be executed by hanging the condemned in the county in which the crime was committed, that such an execution shall be within an enclosure to be provided by the county, and admittance to said enclosure be limited to 100 people. 100 persons. In clear defiance of this provision to limit the number of people witnessing a hanging, white authorities returned to executing Afro-Americans in front of huge, boisterous crowds numbering in the thousands. In June 1932, Sam Jennings was executed in Hardinsburg for the alleged attack of a white woman. According to a black newspaper, the hanging of the colored man attracted such a throng of men, women, and children as might have caused P.T. Barnum of circus fame to hide his face in shame. I mean, it was so many people, so many white people came out for this hanging of a black man. It would have put the whole circus to shame. The P.T. Barnum, the circus, the traveling circus, I guess. It took Jennings 17 minutes to die. It took Jennings 17 minutes to die, to the delight of the crowd who enjoyed every second of the event. Ooh, the public hanging. The public hanging of Rainey Bethea, Rainey Bethea, in Owensboro on August the 14th, 1936, hastened the end of the practice. 2 months earlier, the body of Mrs. Elza Edward had been found in her apartment. The woman had been raped and her apartment burglarized. Found among Edward's possessions was a ring that a police officer recognized as the type made by prisoners in Eddyville. That led police to Rainey Bethea, a former convict who confessed to the murder and assault and told the police where they could recover the woman's missing items. At the trial in Owensboro, the jury deliberated less than 5 minutes before sentencing him to death by hanging. Adding interest to Bethea's execution was the possibility that the hanging would be carried out by a woman sheriff who had been appointed to serve the remaining term of her deceased husband. And remember, it said that the wife could served the remaining part of her deceased husband's term. Although expressing a strong desire to see Bethia die, Florence Thompson decided not to perform the chore. No matter. As the city's historian noted, thousands of people came to Owensboro by horseback, automobiles, excursion trains and buses, and even airplanes during the days leading up to the execution. The Chicago Tribune made much of the fact that many of the people coming were women with babies in their arms. The usual vendors arrived in Owensboro to profit from the black man's impending execution. Many citizens held hanging parties, inviting out-of-town friends to Owensboro. Others held impromptu barbecues and engaged in sporting activities. Some 20,000 people attended the hanging, even though it took place at 5:30 in the morning time. The story in the New York Times said thousands of white people, some jeering and others festive, saw a prayerful black man put to death on Daviess County's pit and gallows. National newspaper accounts, which carried every detail for the folks back home, depicted the people at the hanging as being uncivilized. White people, uncivilized. They told of how people rushed to the gallows to rip off Bethia's clothes, as well as the hangman's hood, for souvenirs. The editor of the newspaper in nearby Henderson had some criticism of the hangings as well. Just a moment. Hello? Hello? Yes. Hi. Oh, no, I'm not. Oh, my bad. Let's get us some Palo burner here, Palo Santos. Okay, where were we at here? Oh, where they was taking everything for souvenirs and stuff. And remember it said that women with babies, all them women with babies. And this right here was in 1932. Yeah, this was in 1932. Oh, this was the editor of the newspaper in nearby Henderson had some criticism of the hanging as well. The hour of the execution, he wrote, should have been more convenient. Perhaps about 2 in the afternoon, so more people could have attended. Like 20,000 people. And it should have been conducted at the high school so that everyone could sit and be comfortable and see the ghastly spectacle. That's what the editor of the newspaper in nearby Henderson said. Rainey Bethia's execution drew nationwide attention to Kentucky as the last state in which public hangings were conducted. Not surprisingly, several organizations concerned about the state's image lobbied for an end to the practice, as the execution of John Pete Montjoy, Montjoy, approached in August 1936. The ASWPL and the Courier-Journal urged the governor to have the execution moved to Eddyville. They achieved a partial victory when Covington officials agreed that Montjoy would die in private. Though the execution would still take place on the gallows. In reaching his decision, the judge expressed concern about the Roman holiday atmosphere that had occurred in Owensboro. About the Roman holiday atmosphere. The Roman holiday atmosphere. What is that? Let me look that up. Let me write that down. The Roman holiday atmosphere. I'm going to read y'all this right here when I'm done. Let's see. The Roman holiday atmosphere. In reaching his decision, the judge expressed concern about the Roman holiday atmosphere that had occurred in Owensboro. Because of appeals, Montjoy's execution was delayed until December 17, 1937. Several months later, on June 3rd, 1938, Harold Van Venison, also a Covington Afro-American, died on the gallows after being convicted of rape. Within a month after his death, the new law went into effect, calling for all executions of the death penalty by electrocution to take place within the walls of the state penitentiary and in such enclosure as will exclude public view thereof. While white reformers were pleased that they had ended a particularly gruesome practice, they never questioned that for more than 2 decades, virtually all of the men who had died on the gallows were blacks who had been convicted by all white juries. Let's read that one more time. While white reformers were pleased that they had ended a particularly gruesome practice, they never questioned that for more than 2 decades, 20 years, they never questioned that virtually all of the men who had died on the gallows was blacks who had been convicted by all white juries. The willingness to publicly execute alleged black rapists underscores the high emotions with which whites regarded this crime and their belief that Afro-Americans were prone to commit this assault, despite the severe punishment awaiting them. For all their proclamations about a strong belief in American law, white folks denied black folks their fundamental rights when a charge of rape or attempted rape was made. Even in Louisville and Lexington, the newspapers maintained their tradition of convicting black people of rape even before they had been captured or given the chance to defend themselves in court. In October 1921, Mildred Sorrell, Sorrell, an 11-year-old, told of being attacked by an unidentified Negro in Lexington's Duncan Park. Numerous suspicious blacks were sharply questioned by the police. The newspaper spoke in harsh terms of the black brute and applauded the actions of the circuit court judge and the grand jury in issuing a John Doe indictment for the black rapist. Several days later, Mildred Sorrell identified Harry Mitchell, a 53-year-old white man known to her as the attacker. She had hidden the truth because Mitchell had threatened to kill her. Earlier that same year, a Louisville white woman was assaulted, allegedly by a black man. For several weeks, while the woman lay in bed, the police brought scores of black men to her home for her to identify. And fortunately for them, she exonerated all of them. According to a black newspaper, the evidence pointed to a white man having committed the crime. But the police persisted in arresting blacks, and the Louisville white newspapers railed daily at black people for the crime. The ultimate outcome of the case is unknown. The very next day, a young white girl told her parents she had been raped by a black man. This provoked the Louisville newspapers to resume their calls for the adoption of drastic steps to remove the black rapist from the streets. Several days later, the young girl confessed to concocting a tale of being assaulted by a Negro after her parents had refused to have her hair cut. Obviously, the young girl lived in an environment in which blacks were talked of as boogeymen, and she knew that to gain sympathy, all one needed to do was claim to have been attacked by a black man. In addition to the cases of Allen Matthias and Earl Thompson, other controversial rape trials of blacks have occurred in Kentucky during this century. The age of the alleged black rapist mattered little to the emotional whites seeking revenge. James Pearsall, Pearsall, was 18 years old when he died on the scaffold in Lexington, Kentucky in July 1906. And Earl Thompson was only 17 when he died in Williamstown in January of 1910. James White of Middlesboro was 16 when he was charged with the criminal assault of a 14-year-old white girl in 1909. On the advice of his court-appointed attorney, White, described as being mentally incapable of understanding the charges against him, pleaded guilty. His attorney had reasoned that a guilty plea was the only thing that might save White from hanging. Nevertheless, he was sentenced to death. A verdict appealed on his behalf. He would be given 2 additional trials, both resulted in death sentences. Interestingly, in early January of 1911, Kentucky's Attorney General, after carefully reviewing the entire case, expressed grave doubts about the validity of the trials and specifically about how White's attorneys had chosen to defend him. He also reached the conclusion that White did not understand the charges made against him. The Attorney General appealed to Governor Wilson to commute the sentence from death to life in prison. Having Wilson determine White's fate was probably viewed as a positive sign by the many people calling for leniency for the black teenager. More than other governors, and rivaled at best only by fellow Republicans William O. Bradley and Edwin P. Morrow, Wilson had consistently denounced mob violence against Afro-Americans, had taken steps to prevent lynchings, and had pardoned dozens of blacks sent to prison who had been tried in hostile environments clearly dominated by the mob. On the recommendation of the Attorney General, he granted a stay of execution for White from January 16th to January 30th in order to make a final ruling on the case. 1 week later, Wilson carefully explained that he wanted to avoid making a decision that would furnish any just ground for fear that the guilty can escape. Execution or give any excuse for mob law or lynch law. Going further, the governor forcefully argued the certainty of punishment takes away the only plausible excuse for mobs and lynching, the fear that the guilty will escape. Complicating this highly charged rape case, however, was the fact that the defendant was clearly retarded. The governor had received information showing that White's father had died in an insane asylum, and that his mother was physically deformed with a large hump on her back. James White, the governor noted, was abnormally small for a man nearing his 20s. He was no bigger than an average 12-year-old. The governor then made a most remarkable statement. The history of the birth of this boy of parents physically and mentally imperfect is simply one more instance of the really wicked policy which permits such people to marry and bear children, physically, mentally, and morally defective, dangerous to the community, a heavy charge on the state, and subject to lifelong sorrow, sin, shame, distress, and suffering. Our system is wickedly wrong. Such people should be by law prohibited from marriage or subjected to any operation which would prevent offspring. This boy is one of the victims of that system, but he is none the less dangerous to society. In his case, if not punished by death, is dangerous to the whole state. Wilson approved the execution of White because he was a danger to society, a person who should have never been born. Undoubtedly, the governor made his decision with white lynch mobs very much in mind. Although committed to ending lynchings, he did not want to be considered soft on criminals, thereby encouraging mobs to take the law into their own hands. He therefore, like other governors, gave in to the will of the mob, though it had clearly been demonstrated by the Attorney General that White, like most blacks accused of rape in small towns, had not received adequate counsel or a fair trial. And though Wilson himself admitted that James White was mentally retarded, on January 30th, 1911, White was put to death in Middlesboro before the usual huge crowd that witnessed public hangings. A highly publicized rape trial occurred in Madisonville in 1926. A number of robberies and assaults had taken place on the highway between Arlington and Madisonville in the early months of 1926. In late March, an automobile carrying 3 young white women stalled, and if the young women are to be believed, 3 unidentified black men suddenly appeared and raped them. The police, as usual, arrested dozens of black men, but released all of them when no evidence could be found linking them to the crime. This should have suggested to the police that additional questioning of the young women might lead to new evidence in the case or to the discovery that no rapes had taken place. Into the controversy came the Hopkins County Ku Klux Klan, condemning lawlessness and calling for the protection of white women. If the police were unwilling to enforce the law strictly and crack down on African Americans, they would. In early April, the Klan held a parade through the streets of Madisonville in support of law and order. Carrying a large flag, 3 marchers stopped at every church, and the Klansmen made a cross formation and knelt for a few moments in silent prayer. Several days later, another white woman, Neil Catherine Breithaupt, 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 told the police that she too had been raped by 3 unidentified black men. Fearing that the Klan would take the initiative, the local police conducted an all-out search, promising that this time the guilty would be brought to justice, instead of knowing or at least suspecting that the white women were lying on black men. The case was broken in a most unlikely manner. While spending time with a prostitute, a white man found a picture of a black man and letters showing that he was intimately involved with the white prostitute. Offended that a white woman would be romantically involved with a Negro, he took the material to the police, who then arrested the woman. Under brutal interrogation by the police, Mabel Bumpus, Bumpass, admitted that she had dated Columbus Hollis, Hollis, and that her close friend, Lucille Davenport, also a prostitute, was intimately involved with 2 black men. The police reasoned that if black men were having sex with white women, they would, to satisfy their lust, attack other white women. So that's what the police thought, that if black men was having sex with white women, they would attack other white women to satisfy their lust. Just random white women. Not the ones that they sleeping with. Just random white women. Just see a random white woman and just want to rape her. They arrested Hollis, and once confronted with the evidence of his association with Bumpus, he broke down. He told the police that he would confess to being an accomplice in the assault of Nia Breather, but he had not raped her. Hollis identified as the rapist the two men already known to the police as lovers of Lucille Davenport, Bunyan Fleming and Nathan Bard, B-A-R-D. With the black men in jail, the authorities ordered the two prostitutes to leave town, warning them that if they remained in Madisonville, the grand jury would take up the case of white prostitutes associating with black men. The police hustled the black men off to Louisville. From the perspective of the local white newspaper, the arrest of the three blacks meant that the case had been solved. Even the Louisville newspaper joined in. The Herald Post referred to Bunyan Fleming as a monkey man and as the leader of the group. In hopes of preventing yet another legal lynching, the Louisville NAACP sent newspaper editor William Warley, W-A-R-L-E-Y, to investigate the charges against the black men. Despite receiving little encouragement from local black residents who were afraid of offending whites, he concluded that the men were innocent and that Hollis had been coerced into lying about the incident. The Louisville branch raised funds to assist in the defense of Fleming and Bard. The three men went on trial in late April in Madisonville. Both the white establishment and the Ku Klux Klan called for their execution. Only the presence of 500 guardsmen prevented the lynching. Only the presence of 500 guardsmen prevented a lynching. Nevertheless, an editorial in the Madison Daily Messenger expressed confidence in the all-white jury to give the men a fair trial. The paper praised Circuit Court Judge Ruby Laffoon, L-A-F-F-O-O-N, who would serve as governor of Kentucky from 1931 to 1935, as the ideal person to preside over the cases. While there is no doubt in the minds of most people of the guilt of the Negro trio, and the messenger concurs in the belief that the right ones are being accused, there is not one among us who should not take pride in the fact that they will receive a fair and impartial trial. Bunyan Fleming was tried first. Given the weak evidence presented by the prosecution, reasonable doubt would have been a logical decision had Fleming been white, but he was not. Hollis, after admitting that the jailers had given him money for candy and cigarettes after he agreed to testify against the other men, said that he held down Nia Breather while Fleming and Bard raped her. Once on the witness stand, the woman had a difficult time identifying Fleming as one of her attackers. Nevertheless, Fleming's jury was out only 9 minutes before sentencing him to death. Nathan Bard received a similar fate. The jury, believing the story told by Hollis and appreciative of his testimony against the others, was lenient toward him, handing down a sentence of 20 years in prison. Tragically, at the conclusion of the trials, Madisonville's black leaders placed a statement in the white newspaper affirming their strong commitment to law and order, implying that the black men have received fair trials. Although they were given an execution date, Bard and Fleming did not die in 1926. After several delays and appeals, a new date was set for April 8th, 1927. After the Kentucky Court of Appeals refused to rehear the case. Yet, on the day prior to the execution, another stay was granted. Federal Judge Charles I. Dawson, Dawson, issued a writ of habeas corpus saying he wanted to make sure that the men had received fair trials. At the hearing in Louisville on April 26, their lawyers argued that the mob had dominated the trial despite the presence of 500 troops. No juror could vote for acquittal and hope to continue living in Hopkins County, they explained. Furthermore, the lawyers said they had been denied sufficient time to speak with their clients before the trial started. Finally, in what they hoped would be their most convincing point, they argued that their request for a change of venue had been turned down because two Black Madisonville citizens had been unwilling to sign an affidavit saying that racial hostilities in the community would make it impossible for a fair trial to take place. Judge LaFoon, the prosecuting attorney, and other Madisonville whites simply argued that the trials had been fair. A week later, the federal judge made known his ruling. It was unfortunate. It was unfortunate, Dawson pointed out, that the Hopkins County Circuit Court had rushed the start of the trials. In a statement that seemed to suggest sympathy for the condemned men, the judge said, "It has been testified here by a lot of people that the crowd at Madisonville was a regular Sunday crowd, but I have had much experience with criminal practice, and I know there was intense feeling there." The judge dismissed the claim of the attorneys that it had been impossible to get two Black citizens to request a change of venue. Under a new Kentucky law, counsel can file a motion for change of venue supported by the affidavit of the defendant to the effect that he is in danger of mob violence. This was not done in the case. Judge Dawson upheld the death sentences for Bard and Fleming, but he gave their lawyers 30 days to appeal his decision. The United States Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals decided that the controversial case demanded additional investigation, which led to a further delay. Reaching its decision at the end of June, the court said Bard and Fleming would hang on July 15th unless granted a stay by the United States Supreme Court. Justice Louisville Brandeis, Brandeis, Justice Louis Brandeis then issued the men a short stay. After finally receiving the go-ahead from the Supreme Court, Governor William J. Fields selected July the 29th as the date for the execution, but then settled on November the 25th to give the attorneys enough time to exhaust the appeals process. They know they can go through the chain of appeals. Satisfied that the men were guilty and that the sentence should have already been carried out, State Attorney General Frank Doughty, Daughter, Doughty. State Attorney General Frank Doughty expressed his displeasure over the 4-month delay. To the delays and uncertainties of the procedure in the courts will be added another instance tending to encourage lawlessness in criminal acts, and in these, in turn, will provoke the slumbering tendency of mob violence. All along, the Louisville NAACP and the National Office in New York had provided legal advice and the much-needed funds to fight the death sentences. Immediately after the governor granted the 4-month delay, James Weldon Johnson prevailed upon Louis Marshall of the NAACP's Legal Defense Department to review the transcripts of the case one last time. Marshall concluded that nothing could be done to save the two men. He and Johnson then agreed that the national office should withdraw from the case because of the organization's philosophy of not sponsoring doubtful cases in which there is not a fair fighting chance and which do not involve some important principle or some outstanding act of prejudice and injustice. In recognition of the gallant effort of the Louisville NAACP on behalf of the doomed men, Johnson did contribute $250, even though he knew the case was lost. The legal opinion expressed by the NAACP and its subsequent withdrawal from the case foreshadowed the end for Bard and Fleming. In early November, the United States Supreme Court refused to review the case. On Wednesday, November 23rd, both the governor and Judge Dawson agreed to a one-week stay to make certain that all the necessary papers arrived in Madisonville. Fearful of a further delay in the case, Madisonville officials sent the sheriff to Cincinnati to pick up the papers and hand-deliver them to the jailer. The governor rescinded the stay, and the next day, the long-delayed execution of Bard and Fleming occurred. The Daily Messenger printed an extra edition headline, "Extra, 2 rapists hang." The front page carried a large picture of Neil Catherine Breither, the beautiful daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Leo Breither. A front page editorial denounced once again the hideous crime Bard and Fleming were executed for committing. The paper also applauded the orderly crowd of 7,000. Estimates by other newspapers put the crowd at close to 20,000. In a second editorial, the newspaper discussed the facts of the entire case and how the Ku Klux Klan had been a positive influence in solving the case. Stormy indeed was this period in the history of Hopkins County, so stormy that no citizen who passed through it would ever wish to see it duplicated. And yet, through it all, there was the manifest desire of the public in general to see the law take its course, the willingness to let the courts handle the case without any attempt at violence without due trial. An editorial from the Louisville Times also supported the hangings, going to great lengths to explain that Bard and Fleming have received fair trials. Unfortunately, highly controversial rape trials did not end with the 1920s. On 2 occasions in the 1930s, Covington, the largest city in northern Kentucky, witnessed rape trials during which white mobs first threatened lynches. Then they demanded that the blacks be quickly tried and sentenced to death. On March 6, 1930, a white woman in the small community of Crescent Springs in Kenton County said she had been raped by a black man. Arrested almost immediately was Anderson McPerkins. Anderson McPerkins, a native of Georgia who had just arrived in the area after jumping from a freight train and who had been seen begging for food in the vicinity of the woman's home. At the trial 2 months later, McPerkins, described as not mentally deficient, just ignorant, was found guilty and sentenced to death. A verdict upheld by the Kentucky Court of Appeals on December 5, 1930. His life was ultimately saved because of the efforts of several groups and individuals in Covington and Cincinnati. After visiting McPerkins in jail, members of the Cincinnati branch of the International Labor Defense, the ILD, wrote letters to local newspapers, hoping to arouse public concern over the arrest of the black youth. To the credit of this organization, instead of using McPerkins' troubles to promote their own causes and realizing that many people found them highly suspect, the ILD encouraged other groups to assist in the fight for the youth's life. Mary D. Bright, Brite, a secretary of the Cincinnati chapter of the American Civil Liberties Union, was contacted, and she wrote to William Pickens of the National Office of the NAACP, informing him about the case and seeking support. Because the Covington NAACP was inoperative, the National Office urged officials in the Cincinnati branch to investigate the case. From the start, the Reverend David M. Jordan, pastor of the 9th Street Methodist Episcopal Church in Covington, had been interested in the case. Using his church as a rallying place for supporters of McPerkins, Jordan raised money for the attorney and for carrying the case to the Kentucky Court of Appeals. With McPerkins awaiting death in 1931, J. Max Bond of the Kentucky Commission on Interracial Cooperation became interested in the case. The turning point in the case occurred when Bond traveled to Kenton County and was able to confirm information that he had received about the disreputable character of the woman. As he noted in a letter to Mary Bright. On February 28th, I had a conference with the governor, Flem Sampson. I believe I presented evidence that proved this boy's innocence. The result of our conference was McPerkins will not die, neither will he get life. As to the exact status of the boy at the present time, I am in no position to state. Although he had evidence that nothing had occurred between McPerkins and the woman, Sampson failed to act on the case for several months. After receiving a number of letters from members of the NAACP, Sampson finally contacted Bond on July 15th, promising to conclude the consideration of the McPerkins case before long and to take some definite action therein. By the end of the month, McPerkins' 1.5-year ordeal had ended with his release from prison. Okay, I think we will start there tomorrow and we will perhaps finish this book. I believe that is the last chapter. It looks like it. Unless that's a smaller chapter. I think this is the last chapter. And we may go through some of the lynchings, the victims of lynchings. Or maybe I'll just skim through them myself, just to see. Because it is Kentucky. Some of these counties I've never even heard of. Bourbon County, Daviess County, Jefferson County, Franklin County, Boyle County, Mercer County, Washington County, Christian County, McVille, Washington County, Pulaski County, well, family. James Anderson was lynched in Hickman, Fulton County, in July of 1877. For depredations upon farms. For depredations upon farms. So I don't know if he was relieving himself. What does that mean, depredations? Let me just write it down. Oh, yeah. Oh, there's another one from Hickman, Fulton, Kentucky. Fulton County. Hickman, Fulton County. Henry Colbert, Colbert, and he was lynched in 1883 for attempted rape. Oh, Union City, which is Madison County. That must be a Union City, Kentucky. But his name was John Thomas, and he was lynched July 1887 for rape. Eli Nary, Nary, Hickman, Fulton County, was lynched March 1888 for arson. Well, good night, fam. Good day and gratitude. Power to the people.